Today I'm going to show you how I made the artwork for my new single, This Love. First of all, thank you to everybody who's been a part of making This Love a really big and successful release. Whether you supported it on radio or in streaming through Spotify playlists, wherever, thank you. Secondly, if you like video content like this, please do let me know. I've actually made a couple of other art videos like this in the past, but the ones I have so far are over on the Reclaimers channel. The first one was about how I painted the artwork for the debut single, Already Over. And then the most recent one was about how I did the composite artwork for the newest single, Say What You Will, which, by the way, recently hit #2 on the CMW Radio Rock charts, so thank God for that, super cool. But I've been thinking about grouping some of those videos together, whether that means re-uploading them as well also here to my main channel so I can put them all in a playlist. I don't think I want to do this, but whether it even means like creating a second channel just for those art videos. I don't think I would upload there often enough to keep up the engagement, but if you're an art nerd like me and you want to kind of see these things in sequence, maybe in a playlist or re-uploaded to this channel and grouped together, let me know. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into this. Here is where the artwork for This Love ended up, but it's certainly not where it started. So let me actually show you one of the first iterations I created. This is basically a finished piece of art. Visually, it communicates to you that this song is modern and it's fresh. I was showing this to my mom, and as we chatted, I remembered though that I had originally had an idea that I almost forgot about, which was to have a heart carved into a mystical tree made of glowing wood. After spending hours and hours creating this one, I was like, oh yeah, I really like that original idea though. I have to try that one too. These are both composite pieces of art, which I've talked about this before. It means you're taking different photographs and bringing them together and unifying them. Often the different photos that you're bringing together have different lighting. They're shot from different perspectives or with different camera lenses. The trick and the skill comes in finessing those things together to make them look unified. We have like the reflection on the ground underneath the heart, or the reversed reflection of the heart. I have this haze around the neon symbol, but it was a different color. It was actually some photographs of some clouds, so we colorized those to make them look purple, like they're grabbing the light coming off of this heart. And the same thing with having that purple light on the wet street around it. So now let's talk about that in the context of the finished art. And there was a lot of things that I tried that I ended up not keeping, which was a little bit sad, but it was necessary. One of the biggest ones was this little berry. I really loved the idea of this, but in the end, it was just a little bit distracting from the central monolithic nature of the image. I tried some other things too. I had some leaves that were coming down from the tree over the top. I tried putting a vine growing up here, and all that stuff was supposed to be bioluminescent, really digging into the idea that underneath the bark, the wood of this tree is glowing. The fruit, the leaves of this tree are glowing. So some of the things I left in that shows that not only is the heart, but then you have these beams of light showing through the cracks in the bark and the wood here, just in a couple little places. At one point I had more of these kind of all over the place, and that was too much. I was overplaying my hand. But going back to this berry really quick, this is a real fruit. I guess it's called like a lantern berry, and they're orange and red. So I recolored it. I added some glow to it to make it look like it's giving off some light. This leaf is a totally separate element. And then there's this light underneath, which really helped bring it all together to sell the idea that this is glowing, so it would be casting some light up under the bottom here. All that work, and I didn't even use it. This is sort of important though. I know a writer who's an editor, and I hate this term. I want to find a better phrase, but he uses the phrase killing your darlings, which basically means sometimes there's things that gratify us as artists that we just think is really cool, but it doesn't overall serve the purpose of the piece of writing or visual art or music that we're creating. So we have to cut those things so that the core idea comes through and can perform even better. And this berry was one of those things. Okay, let's get down to the elements that I did include. Let's start off with the background. So the background started just as this photo. I really like this photo because it had a nice moody atmosphere, but still warm and inviting colors. Great contrast with the trees being backlit by what I see to be a sunrise. But I needed to create some separation between the background and the foreground. I wanted to create some bokeh. Added a Gaussian blur to that to make it look like it's far back off in the distance. And then when we add our tree back in, there's a lot more focus. It's like the camera is just focused on that tree and not the whole scene. This tree is its own element. cut this out of a totally different photograph, and obviously the heart wasn't there to begin with, so it's just a tree. The heart is really the main painted element. The heart and then this light shining through the cracks in the bark are all elements I painted in by hand, using my graphics tablet over here. And it's not really the greatest painting I've ever done. If we zoom in, it's a little bit rough around the edges, no pun intended. There's a lot of little layers in here where I was adding and taking away from the contrast, pushing that kind of chiseled look for it. But when we get in here really close, it's not photorealistic. It doesn't really look like wood. And I kept trying to push it. I kept trying to make it better and better. But at a certain point, I was like, if I zoom out and my eye is convinced, then that's the most important thing. And I can't let perfection be the enemy of completion here. And then there's the issue of the glow. Like, how can we convince your viewer that this is not just blue? It's not somebody didn't just paint like a bluish teal heart on a tree, but it's actually glowing up from underneath. So in a couple of different layers, I used a soft paint brush with some soft light or different blending modes to kind of help you with that glow. And then there's even one here over the top, which is my final one. I take that away, still looks good, but this is part of selling the glow. Something else that I think about, especially nowadays, is how I can keep some of these layers to use them in video later on, especially if I'm going to make something like a lyric video. How can I animate these things? And you can see the way that these moving elements came together in the This Love lyric video. So that's why it's so important to hang on to these edits and keep these layers so you can animate them later. One of my favorite parts is the way that this green glow layer right here pulses with the kick drum of the song. Boom, boom, boom. Now we need to get everything to glue together, and that's where I have all these layers of these specks, this pollen and this haze. If I take this away, the image still looks pretty good, but it seems a little bit more separate, a little bit more like different elements put together. So this is something that I do a lot when I'm compositing, is try to find ways to put some stuff over the top to help things glue. These specks are actually just photographs of stars that I applied some Gaussian blur to so that they weren't so defined. And then when you blur them, they start looking like pollen. And you can see there's little spots like down here where I even gave a little bit of that teal glow to certain of these specks so that it kind of looks like this glowing tree maybe has some fruit up there, has some glowing leaves up there, and this is the pollen flowing from it. And it's all just so charged with life that it's maintaining that glow even as it wisps down to the ground. And then there's also a level of haze. Now we saw this back here in this original artwork, and I used the same trick. This haze is a photograph of some clouds. It's composited in using a soft light blending mode, and then just kind of using a layer mask to just put it where I want it to be. So when we have this over the top, you put this haze together with this glow layer. Now it looks like the light is being caught by the water particles and the mist in the air, that early morning fog. Just 2 or 3 things compounding with each other to sell the idea, even though it is hyper real. One thing I forgot to mention is that with the heart, I wanted to make sure that it looked like it was on a rounded tree. So here's the way the painting started, and then I ended up sampling that up and warping that just ever so slightly as I click back and forth to make it look like it was on a round tree. Last few finishing touches here. We've got this vignette, which if I didn't tell you, you probably wouldn't have really known there was a vin on this image. But when I take it away, suddenly it's really apparent. It's using an overlay blend mode, which helps take the background from this sort of yellow greenish look and pulls it into more of a warmer orange, which I thought stuck with the brown of the tree bark really well. It also helps pull your attention to the center. I get distracted by vignettes when I see them in movies and in film, because you have moving elements going on behind a static vignette element in the front, and it kind of can take me out of the moment sometimes if it's not done tastefully. But I do tend to use them a little bit more in still imagery. It's easy to overdo it. If it's too harsh, you start noticing it, but if it's just enough, if it's blended correctly, it can really help pull your attention to the center. We have this curves adjustment here. You can see the layers underneath started getting a little dark as I was digging into the contrast, so I'm just re-hyping up all of the overall mids and mid-highs. And then one last thing with the text, got a little bit of a glow going on. I wanted the text to be pretty clean and modern looking, so I didn't want to overdo this. But this whole image was pretty bright and inviting and warm, and so I thought just a little bit of an exterior glow on the text could help bring that all together. When you're doing artwork like this for music, or if you're doing a music video, we have a little bit more leeway, right? We can hype things up more than we normally would because we're not going for photoreal. We're going for hyperreal. We're going for eye-popping and keeping somebody's attention. But there are times where you can still overstep that bound and make yourself look like an immature artist by just turning everything up to 11. So even though we want to end up with a hyped, hyperreal image, we do it by little steps up one at a time that come together to create that, as opposed to just, unless we're creating pop art where the whole idea is everything is supposed to be turned to 11. So I hope you enjoyed this. Again, if you like this sort of content, let me know. Make sure that you grab my new single, This Love, by visiting the link in the description on your favorite streaming or download site. Go to the website, grab some cool merchandise, all the things people always say at the end of these videos. You know how it goes. Until next time, I love you, Jesus loves you, onward and upward.